This is our decade to clean up emissions. How do we as architects ensure that the buildings we design and remodel today assist and not hinder the making of a clean energy world? My answer is that building design must be energy design. We need to be as expert in building energy as we are in other areas of design and not let it be an afterthought. And the good news is that we have the digital tools to do that as an integrated part of the design process. I'm Tom Bassetilli, architect and certified passive house consultant. In 2006, I formed TBDA to pursue sustainability, and I knew that energy efficiency would be central to the work. When the crash of 2009 slowed things down, I went to the Passive House Institute US, FIAS, to take certified passive house consultant training, and it was the best move I could have made. I left with the building science knowledge and energy modeling tools to thoroughly understand the energy impacts of design decisions in the design process. Knowledge is power. Let me give you a couple examples. This is a Source Zero passive house, Source Zero being FIAS's term for net zero, that the owners named Acorn Glade, certified last year after the solar PV went on. The aim here is, with all our work, was to marry performance and aesthetics, which means integrating the energy model from early schematic design. The idea was to create a compact, tough exoskeleton that peels back like an acorn where people and sunlight enter, and to use sunlight to organize spaces inside. The focal space of this house is the stair hall, with massive windows across from a wall of site-salvaged walnut. Once we have a massing concept in design, we make a simple SketchUp model of the thermal envelope and import it into Woofy Passive, the energy modeling program for FIAS certification. We use Woofy Passive for non-passive house projects as well. It's our go-to since it's detailed, comprehensive, and verified. There's a lot of input to get the model up and running: assembly R values, mechanical system performance, ventilation schedules, and the like. But given our experience, we can usually get a first pass in just a few hours. And that's when the fun begins. We have a lot of knobs to turn, so to speak, to see what different orientations, shading, windows, R values, air tightness levels, and appliance efficiencies have, not just on the overall energy, but also on the heating and cooling annual demand and peak loads. I think of it as a tool that we use to tune the building to its environment and to test the economics of solutions. The model also gives us an annual energy target to use in sizing the PV array. Mind you, modeling and usage can vary widely, but this gives us a starting point. We use NREL's PV Watts program to get an approximation of the PV array size, and then work with the PV installer to fine-tune that based on their product lines and more accurate solar modeling. New buildings are relatively straightforward, we find, but retrofits, arguably the bigger, more urgent need, tend to be more complex. We find the energy model helps us and our clients visualize the value of retrofit components. This example is for a classic Chicago 2 flat. We use the model to show overall energy reduction, furnace size requirement, annual energy costs along the way. With this knowledge, we can design the passive retrofit so that a PV array that fits on the roof can get us to our target EUI. The energy reduction demonstrated here is widely achievable in our Climate Zone 5 older buildings. They tend to waste most of the energy that comes their way due to low insulation and air tightness levels. We must massively scale up the pace of deep energy retrofits if we're going to decarbonize, and this kind of modeling is a tool to guide good decisions as we build a library of case studies. As the pace of cleaning up emissions accelerates, architects who can confidently guide retrofit and new construction solutions toward low and zero carbon will be the more relevant and in-demand practitioners, I believe. I urge all small firm leaders to invest in the training, to make energy model part of your process, and to help lead climate progress in the construction sector. Thank you, and carry on the good work.
I love the concept of being a global citizen. And again, values, personal values, thinking of your practice as something that fits into a bigger purpose and a bigger impact, not just your business and the projects that you design, the clients that you have, and the communities that you're building in, but your a global citizen, and you're contributing to the world, and your impacts actually have much farther reach than just the boundaries of your site. And what does that mean for your practice? What does that mean for the decisions that you make? I love the concept, again, in everyone's presentation, that energy is not an afterthought. Um, it's something that you need to incorporate into all different aspects of what you're considering, not just operationally in terms of heating and cooling, but also in terms of the products and materials and the embodied energy in the choices of materials. And Architecture 2030 and other websites have great resources about kind of the big moves. If you're building with steel or you're building with concrete, there are better decisions that you can make that are easy. They've given you some of the quick, easier answers. Energy is not an afterthought. And at the same time, we know how. These are not big mysteries anymore. There are enough case studies, enough projects, enough architects who have figured this out that if you're just starting on this path, you have an advantage. You can learn from what has come before. So just reach out, AIAU, this community, lots of good resources out there. So again, hopefully you don't feel despair. And the worst thing you could do is address this whole energy problem as an afterthought or separate from your core design approach. Imagine if our bodies were that way and our lungs were duct taped to our back. Like, that's the way we need to think about energy, that it is integral to the life support system of the building. Passive house, literacy, fluency, and connecting those kinds of design strategies throughout your workflow. That's really the secret. It's your education and your knowledge and understanding of the design strategies that provide the most value to your client, and understanding when and how to integrate them into your workflow. And it's also understanding that performance and aesthetics are not at war with each other. As hopefully you've seen throughout this webinar series and in other places, there are some incredibly beautiful projects out there that are zero carbon. Just look at the Coat Top 10 Awards. Look at any publication these days, and you'll find good examples of that. So it's an artificial divide. And you can see how he talked about the projects using the sun as an organizer, an organizing principle. On bigger projects, energy loads and reallocating program spaces in part based on the load demands in the program can really help reduce equipment sizes, equipment and motor sizes and distribution demands. So it's really about what architecture is all about. It's thinking holistically and systems thinking, which we do anyway. That is our job. So it's just applying it and incorporating energy, materials, health as part of what we're considering. He talked a lot and showed some great images about how they use Woofy and other tools. So there's a ton of tools out there. Figuring out which tool is right for you and how to incorporate it into your practice. Some tools are better for some practices and some for others. So figure out the tools that fit for you. And it's great to be able to tune your decisions based on actual data and input so that you can calibrate to achieve goals and decisions that you're trying to achieve. And the trade input, the solar installer, you can hypothesize, you can analyze, but having that timely input of the people whose boots are on the ground and who know from experience the installation issues and other things is also really important to have as early on as possible. And keep in mind that tools are also important because good decisions can be counterintuitive. Sometimes investing, in the building envelope is good up to a certain point, especially for larger, maybe commercial buildings. But then, there are other considerations to make. So especially in terms of embodied carbon, good decisions can be counterintuitive. So the use of tools and analysis is critical to actually reach decisions that you can quantify. And don't forget to post occupancy, see what's actually happening and learn from that. And so that you can continuously improve. Last thing, I want to really commend you for bringing up retrofits, because really that is our huge problem in this country, and certainly not an easy one, depending on where you live, in what climate zone and what kind of code context. But as you saw from his presentation, also not impossible. And there's definitely different opportunities. So you can definitely make improvements. And even if you can't get to where you want to go, you can certainly make improvements. So those tools and using those analysis tools to help you make the best decision is really critical, because the retrofits in particular are going to be critical in to achieve our long-term goals and reverse the impacts that we've been making over the years unintentionally.
When we started our practice back in 1997, we established 5 basic goals towards meeting energy efficient buildings.
The first is to harmonize with the site. The design really starts from the ecology and the climate.
Next is to build as little as possible, which is perhaps ironic for architects, but it's really taking advantage of flexible space, and here in California, living outdoors as much as indoors.
The third is passive survivability, which is buildings that heat and cool themselves and generate their own electricity through photovoltaics or other means.
Fourth is resource efficiency, which is understanding the life cycle of the materials and more paying attention to their carbon impacts.
The fifth we call connectivity and delight, which is connecting people to each other, connecting people to their built environment, and then connecting to the natural world, and doing so lyrically.
Here are a few techniques we recommend as you target zero net carbon buildings. First is to communicate them. The 5 priorities we just discussed can be found front and center on our website. And in interviews, we share these slides, and have been since the early 2000s, showing our commitment to the carbon neutral buildings by the year 2030. We also try to walk our talk and show our clients that these are indeed achievable. We outline a design process, and we find that by sticking to this, high-performing buildings fall out almost naturally. A third bit of advice is to orient the buildings in the right direction, and we say this accounts for 75% of the performance and usually comes as close to free. But integrating passive and active solar techniques can also add quite a bit of architectural interest to a project. Most of the 3D tools available today come with a built-in heliodon, allowing you to quickly study the direct sunlight impacts on your building. Along with this, we employ a thermal performance modeling tool in-house, but often on a larger project, we'll engage a building envelope and energy efficiency consultant as a double check on our work. One thing that's been a priority for our firm for quite some time is integrating carbon storing materials such as straw, bamboo, hemp, and of course wood, and marrying these with low carbon cementitious materials such as clay, lime, and quarry fines. And by doing so, we address the upfront carbon impacts of our buildings. Recently, we engaged in a study of a prototype building that could prove that buildings can indeed become the Earth's 6th carbon sink. To learn more about this, we recommend Architecture 2030's Carbon Smart Materials Palette, where you can learn about both the heavy hitters and some of these carbon smart alternatives. On a recent project of ours, we used the beam calculator to show that while a project might typically have 300 kilograms of CO2 emitted per meter squared, and a good one might have 75. In this case, we were down around 1 kilogram per meter squared. And the client, instead of suggesting we substitute foam for cork insulation to save money, was interested in taking that next step and getting into carbon storing territory. We suggest going in with a presumption that the building is going to be all electric and feature on-site photovoltaics as a starting point to the conversation, rather than trying to talk people into featuring these things. Off-site renewables are now part of the DDX, making achieving the 80% carbon reduction a little easier when you've got a clean electricity grid. Last, don't be shy about communicating your success stories. This lets the world know that you are capable of creating both beautiful buildings and ones that help to save the planet. In a project of ours, we showed that storage of carbon in the walls was not only effective, but also affordable. And now that embodied carbon is in the next version of the DDX, albeit on a voluntary optional basis, it will begin to incorporate these upfront carbon impacts as well as the building performance and operational impacts.
We asked our team here at ATA to come up with a few more tips. And the first was that we've been working with natural building materials for a long time, so we have that as a basis.
We have some consultants who share the goals that we have here, namely Verdant Structural Engineers, our partner here in our office space, and also Beyond Efficiency for building envelope and energy efficiency.
We also work in California, where we've had very strong energy codes since 2007.
Last, we acknowledge that we're not perfect, and we try to do our best to not sacrifice the goals of the 2030 commitment. And we encourage you to dive in and do your best.
Well, I hope you find that as inspiring as I do, but I also don't want you to feel despair if you're in a firm that did not have those founding principles back when your firm was established. So back in 1997, clearly the driving approach to design was intrinsic to what they're doing today. And one of the important things is that they are internally driven and not reactive to their clients. They don't just do sustainability or low carbon, healthy buildings when their clients ask for it. It's part of their approach, what they consider to be best practice, and ethically what now AIA says is good practice. But don't feel despair. If you were not founded on the basis of that approach to design, it's not too late. Many firms have reestablished what they're driving motivations and their principles of design are. They've pivoted and they've adjusted. So it's possible, it's been done, you can do it. And it's a question of what are your design values? What is your approach and how does that evolve? Because certainly design values have evolved over time and yours can too. So think about how that relates to who you are, what your brand promise is, what your identity is, and how does it manifest for you? I love the focus on design process and methodology. And the fact that there is this algorithm that success is actually an outcome of the commitment that you make to be an internally driven focus on quality, sustainability, plus a clear process. So the inverse is also true. You cannot achieve success without the commitment, without setting goals for your projects internally, not just your clients' goals, but also you as the architect setting goals and knowing how you're going to achieve them. Having a methodology, how you get from A to B to C. It doesn't mean that you don't have a creative process. It just means that you know how to achieve a consistently excellent outcome. You know, if I'm a client and I'm coming to you, I want to know, how do you deliver the best design, the best quality, the best value, the best project. If you can't tell me that, how you achieve that consistently, how would I know? So how do you know for yourself? A design approach that is based on passive principles first. We're hearing this consistently. Again, that's the free stuff. If you're not doing that, you're leaving it on the table. You're missing opportunities. So that's the first thing. Passive principles first. And then intelligent and timely use of tools. Architecture 2030, Beam, Woofy, lots of tools out there, knowing when and how to use them, and intentionally aligning your consultants and trade partners with your workflow, with your project types, with your expectations. And it's better to do that outside of the context of a project schedule and budget, to have some of those conversations. And if you don't have partners who are up for this, time to look for new partners, because it's just going to be easier for you. And that can happen over time. And you can bring your partners along if they're open to it. I love the concept of assuming all electric as a start. This is about mindset. And larger firms do this too, even on projects where the client is not asking for net zero or all electric buildings. There are firms out there who will always present that option to the client, because sometimes a client will not ask for it, may not be open to it, but once they see the option and what the gap is between what they asked for and actually achieving that and the value that they can achieve from that, all of a sudden they get interested, and it's a learning experience. So it's a mindset question. Do you start at zero and then see how close you can get to it? Or do you start not at zero and not get anywhere near it? So that's a culture and a mindset question for your firm. And then marketing and business development. If you want the clients who want this, then you have to start looking at your practice, become literate in both data and energy strategies, and need to be able to connect the dots between the design strategies and the outcomes, and talk about it in the context of the value to your client, not just financial value, but comfort, thermal comfort, the things that are whatever it is that's important to your clients. Those are all important. And over time, you will see, as other firms have done, you can start to transition your practice to attract more and more of the kinds of clients you want, whether it's around sustainability or not. In California, the codes certainly help. So those of you who are not in California may be very jealous. But codes are changing, and I'm based in Massachusetts, although I work all over the country. And code advocacy is part of our job. I mean, codes are what we live with. So here we have architects, engineers, all kinds of design and building professionals who are spending a lot of time on code advocacy to develop stretch codes, net zero codes. And that is something that you can participate in, which you will then benefit from.
I'm Paul Poirier, the principal architect of Poirier and Associates Architects, a small 6-person firm in Santa Barbara, California. I wanted to share with you why I care about the environment and what drives my passion for sustainable architecture. My dad was from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and passed down a love and respect for nature to his kids, as well as a love of warm weather moving to Southern California. Getting out in nature, whether it was camping at the beach in Carpinteria, fishing in the Sierras, or backpacking at 12,000 feet, that deep commitment to nature was forged in me. Starting out as a young architect, I wasn't always able to express my commitment to the environment in the work I was doing, even though I lived in one of the most beautiful places on earth, also probably the mildest climate zone, Santa Barbara, California. Santa Barbara was also the birthplace of the modern environmental movement that started with the big oil spill of 1969, which led to the hardened community commitment to the environment and the first Earth Day, as well as the formation of the EPA. When I started my firm in 1993, along with a commitment to sustainability, I set a goal to establish a sustainable foundation for future generations through architecture. In the 1993 recession, I learned that small firms are more nimble and can adapt to emerging technologies and design innovations faster than larger firms. In the early 90s, with the threat of climate change, our community was having discussions about the impact of climate change on our city. The community was planning a strategy to transform our local economy off of fossil fuels and toward renewable energy resources. Going from a dependence on fossil fuels in 2005 to fossil fuel reduction in 2030. We as architects have to be a part of this transformation. AIA is stepping up to the plate to help us make a difference. In 2010, our firm became a signatory of the 2030 commitment, and we established a sustainability action plan for the office and have implemented most of our original targets from 2010, retrofitting the lights, purchasing new energy efficient equipment, using PDFs instead of paper, recycling composting programs in our office, as well as secure bicycle storage areas. We first reported our data in 2010 to the 2030 DDX. We found a 34.8% reduction in PEUI for our portfolio. The goal at the time was 60%. It was then that we realized that every project mattered, and we needed to focus on bringing all of our jobs up in performance. We were feeling good about some recent high-performing projects we'd completed, but we saw that we could do much better. Everyone can push the envelope within the confines of a conventional architectural practice. Our design strategy is to reduce the building energy use and then offset that reduced use with renewables when we can. All new projects are modeled in California, so we include our engineering teams in the early phases of our projects through integrated design and work as a team to set early goals and agreed upon strategies for high performance. Some projects have elaborate 3D models and others are modeled simply, but there's always a back and forth with our engineering team to fine-tune the envelope and the building systems. Architects need to explore new solutions through integrated design with our engineering teams, with our contractors to drive effective change. Design innovation can't happen in a bubble. We also started to design and model our projects for performance, not just for compliance. Our early design team stopped modeling when we had crossed the compliance line, but when we were focused on performance, we requested more complete modeling be completed to actually provide a complete reckoning of the complete project's performance. We worked on the Straw Bale House in San Ynez with an experienced contractor from Templeton, California. The contractors shared their knowledge about construction detailing as well as engineering research, so we could have its first of its kind home permitted in Santa Barbara County through the alternative means and methods allowed by code. Our engineering team worked with the contractor to use solar energy to heat the floor slab, to heat the hot water in the building, provide net zero energy with a PV array, implement a dual pipe gray water system, passive ventilation systems to augment the HRV we put in the building. And we also sourced local timber for cabinetry and trim throughout. So it's really a collaboration with the contractor. We also invited other architects and neighbors to partake in the straw bale installation so they could learn about this building type. Here's the completed house. Every project can be an opportunity. Small gains on large projects are just as important as large gains on small projects. Integrated design with our engineering team resulted in envelope upgrades and shading to reduce heat gain on this 30,000 square foot office building in Goleta, California. The last 4 years, we've seen a climate change accelerating on the Central Coast, from droughts to record-breaking wildfires, intense thunderstorms, even the Thomas debris flow. This is sending a strong message to our clients, and our community. 9 of the 10 largest wildfires in California have happened in the last decade. With increasing wildfires worldwide, it's time for architects to act now. Architects need to learn to speak high-performance building vocabulary to direct our design teams and to have a dialogue about this with our clients. Recently, we've been inspired to move away from the use of fossil fuels in our designs, like in this U.S. Forest Service office in Solvang, California. Every project from a small firm matters. We're the training ground for the next generation of architects. Small firms can work together to have a big collective impact on climate change. So hop on the 2030 commitment. Thank you.
It's nice to hear a bit also from someone about their personal story and personal values. And I think, especially with small firms, personal values really do drive your practice. And Paul's vision, you heard, is focused on the consideration of future generations. It's not just about, we give you value, we are service-based or whatever, but it's also thinking about the role your practice plays in a larger context, because the things that you do leave a footprint into the future and future generations. So as you're thinking about how to transform your practice or redirect your practice, think about what your personal values are and how they manifest and what your vision is for the future and the impact of your work on future generations and on the community. Speaking of community, context matters. Paul was talking about wildfires, flooding, Santa Barbara's plan in terms of dealing with rising sea level. Pretty much every community has issues that they have to deal with, even if it's just severe storms. I say just, I don't mean to minimize, but that should be part of your consideration, both in terms of your designs as well as your marketing and business development. Some of your clients either may be ignorant and just not know, or if you can connect their decisions about the design of their home or their office to how many days can you survive without power? If there's a power outage for a week, is that okay? How comfortable do you want to be in the middle of winter or the middle of summer if there's no power? Because that will impact your building envelope design. So it's really your job to connect those dots for your client. And in order to do that, of course, you have to be educated and understand what those dots are and how to connect them. But there's plenty of resources on AIAU for that and in this community. I love that Paul mentioned an action plan. Nothing happens by accident, especially nothing like this. So intention is critical. The AIA 2030 commitment requires an action plan and a letter. Those are really the two big requirements aside from ongoing reporting to the DDX. And an action plan really should be an action plan, not something that's created in piece of paper that sits getting dusty, but really, how are you going to operationalize this? How is your firm going to become literate? How is your business going to develop? What is your business going to look like in 5 years? Sustainability is not in a vacuum. It is intrinsically connected to business development, marketing, communication, your relationship with your consultants. All of these things are part of an intentional business. Whether you're a sole practitioner or you have an office of 3 or 10, these are things you can control, certainly have intention to plan for, and a plan is important. And it's really important to the culture of your office that you walk the talk. Again, 3 people instead of 300, you still have an office culture. I love that every project matters. That's a really important point that is somewhat easier in a small firm than in a gigantic firm. Small firms often say the large firms have it easier because they have all these resources. It's critical to set goals on every project that are internally driven. If you don't have a client that says, give me a 0 carbon building, which is obviously not going to be every or most clients, you need to have internally driven goals on your projects, which we're hearing in this series. So even if the goal is not 0, you have to set a goal internally about what you're going to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And obviously, hopefully this is obvious, passive is first. You have to be able to understand all of the opportunities that passive design affords, from siting, orientation, all of that. Capitalize on that. It's free. So no client's going to argue with that. Certainly you have to weigh and balance many considerations. So it's not trivial, but if you ignore it, then you're ignoring basically free money. And the message about performance rather than compliance when it comes to energy modeling. Now, if you're from California, you're going to have to model anyway. But there is a difference between modeling for performance versus compliance. And you want any analysis you do for energy to inform your design decisions and not come too late in the process to do so. So that's really, really critical. And then you saw that Paul was highlighting a straw bale house, also talking about gray water, et cetera. There are going to be things in your practice that you haven't done before. And that's scary. Liability issues are scary. But what I would say is very few things have never been done before. Can't think of any right now. If it's been done before, you can learn from others, from builders, from other architects, and you can take things on one at a time. So try to expand your practice, try and learn from others for things that you have not yet experienced yourself. And you'll see over time that you'll do just what Paul did in his practice. There was a time before he did gray water and straw bale and a time after. And it can be scary, but it's not impossible.
Hi, my name is Jordan Goldman. I'm the engineering principal at Zero Energy Design. We are an architecture and engineering firm with offices in Boston, New York City, and Portland, Maine. We have focused on high performance super insulated residential projects for the last 15 years. We work predominantly in New England. As our name suggests, net zero energy or better is our performance goal for every project. Our approach towards the home's energy efficiency starts from the bottom up. Incorporated into every design are super insulated wall and roof assemblies, triple pane windows, and a continuous air barrier. To that excellent envelope, we incorporate very efficient mechanical domestic hot water, lighting, and appliance systems to meet the home's energy demand in as efficient a manner as possible. And then finally, we add renewable energy systems to offset most or all of the home's energy over the course of the year. We have a number of certified passive house consultants on staff. This allows us to kind of weave the passive house design techniques and detailing into every design, regardless of whether or not a home is getting passive house certified or not. We incorporate mechanical design services into all of our residential projects. This allows us to ensure that our low load houses are being properly served by appropriate equipment. Incorporated into every design is continuous ventilation with heat recovery. We've been submitting to the 2030 challenge since 2012 or 2013. Over that time frame, we've got approximately a 90% predicted EUI reduction. There are a number of factors that contribute to that success, but the common thread is that we are good at the 2030 challenge because all of our homes are designed inherently to meet the 2030 requirements. All we do are super insulated projects. We've got all of the design expertise in-house. Our design philosophy of prioritizing the envelope first yields better results from an energy efficiency perspective. We see all of our projects through to completion so that we can ensure that our design elements are actually executed during the construction. And just from a philosophical standpoint, we believe that homes should be designed like this. Energy efficiency shouldn't be an option, but rather an inherent part of every design. One of the first lessons to share is that the client really matters, and filtering out clients during the sales process can be an effective way to improve the overall performance of the house. Uncommitted clients who need to be convinced that energy efficiency should be a problem are kind of a red flag, and that convincing is often unsuccessful. We incorporate energy modeling into all of our design processes. We use it as a tool in the design toolbox. And from a 2030 perspective, when it comes time to reporting, we have all of the energy modeling information on hand already. So that's helpful. We like to install energy monitoring equipment into all of our completed houses. This allows us to document the actual performance, flag any systems that are underperforming, and provide feedback for future energy models to better ensure accuracy. We have found that it is key to treat the contractor as a collaborative member of the design and build process. Having their buy-in, having their insights during construction is critical to the successful completion of the project. Testing the building envelope's airtightness is among the most important diagnostic tools during the construction process. We like to test once the air barrier is complete, before the insulation is installed, which gives us the opportunity to fix any problems before they're covered up. Over the years, we have set minimum performance thresholds for our designs, and we're continuously upgrading those. This allows kind of incentive to the design team to kind of push the envelope again and again, and allows us to craft a consistent message between the design team and the client. And with that, I thank you, and thank you for your time.
Zero Energy Design is another firm that was founded with zero energy as a fundamental philosophy. But little secret, if your firm was not, that's okay. You can still get there. So don't be disheartened. One of the things that they pointed out with talking about the building envelope and insulation, etc., know what works. Once you invest the time in your own education and understanding, it's not rocket science, as my husband, the ex-rocket scientist, would say. There are not infinite possibilities. So it's really all about your own education, understanding what are the different alternatives, going through it and learning on the job, as it were, and then figuring those things out, and then repeating success and repeating what works. Another thing that you can see from their work is that low energy, low carbon design is inherent to their work. It's not added on, it's not extra, it's not this thing on the side. It's part of the value that they deliver to their clients, not an add-on. I really love what they pointed out about the client matters. Now, there are differing opinions on this. There are plenty of firms out there and plenty of firms in this series who actually do convince their clients and convince them successfully. It's not impossible. It's not their choice. And there are many firms out there who have decided we don't want to work with the people whose values are not aligned with ours. That's a completely valid choice. And depending on who you are and who your firm is, you can go down one path or another. If you don't want to work with clients who you have to fight with, it's a matter of being intentional in your business development. It's about being able to tell the story, make the business case and the value proposition so that you can attract the clients who are aligned with those values. It has been done, it's been done successfully, and you can do it too. One of the things that enables them to do that is incorporating energy modeling into the workflow, which also makes it easier when it comes time to report for the 2030 commitment program to the DDX, the Design Data Exchange, makes it a lot easier to do that. So they have energy expertise in-house. You may not. Either way is fine. The important thing is understanding how to incorporate it into your workflow, what to expect from your energy consultants or your engineers, and how to articulate what you expect so that you can be aligned. Buildings live on after construction administration. The blower door testing and other testing that they mentioned, and then monitoring that building after it's been occupied, those are really important in particular so that you can learn and continuously improve. This is good not just for environmental and public health impacts to reduce them, but also so that you can market and have solid business development. You can tell the stories. You can say, we did this. This was the quantified impact. Now we do that, and here's the value it provides. So not only doing the analysis at the right time to influence decisions in the design process, but also doing the testing during construction and the monitoring after construction as a feedback loop so that you can learn and tell an intelligent story and help with your business development.
Hello, I'm Marin Longhurst, architect and certified passive house consultant for Sam Rodell Architects in Spokane, Washington. The American Institute of Architects 2030 commitment has set a goal for all new buildings, developments, and renovations to be carbon neutral by 2030, and we are one of 27 firms to meet the 70% predicted energy use intensity reduction for 2019. Louis Kahn claimed that architecture must begin with the unmeasurable, must go through measurable means when it's being designed, and in the end must be unmeasurable. We begin every project, whether it's a home or commercial building, with building science principles and high performance in mind. From the conceptual phase onward, we think about orientation on the site, interaction with the specific climate, and the balance between transparency and opacity. The interaction between indoors and out is significant to the experience of the occupant, with the often competing goals of daylighting, comfort, access to the outdoors, and energy use. We introduced the idea of passive house building early in the process. Instead of answering the typical question, how many years of energy cost savings will it take to pay back the initial investment? We show clients that the financial argument in favor of the passive house approach is strong by using a cost amortization method. They end up with a higher quality product that is healthier and more comfortable, often at a lower cost from year one. As each project is refined and amassing is determined, we model every project in Woofy, the proprietary software developed in partnership between Fies and Fraunhofer, to optimize assemblies, construction details, window types, comfort systems, all the important components to meet the strict energy performance targets of the Fies protocols. Using rigorous modeling of the building envelope, components, and climate data, we can refine the building and take the intuitive, conceptual approach into the realm of the measurable. As we translate our findings into construction documents, we take care in defining and communicating the crucial details that ensure the building will perform as predicted. We work with trained and certified passive house builders who are skilled at applying best practices and developing innovative approaches to solve every aspect of construction. This partnership connects the design process to a successful build. Staying on top of new developments in high-performance construction is important to us as a firm. A local aero barrier practitioner was able to help us bring the airtightness on this house from 1.2 air changes per hour to 0.3 air changes per hour in an afternoon of envelope sealing. An important part of FIA certification is the requirement for third-party verification of building performance. Our raters inspect insulation detailing, airtightness, and systems installation, balancing, and performance. They also prepare reports that allow us to compare our performance to homes across the board with a widely recognized HERS score. This methodology provides our clients with dramatically enhanced comfort, health, quality, and economy, along with measurable improvement in energy efficiency. This home uses a PV array carefully hidden from view to achieve net positive performance in a challenging climate. Many efforts towards sustainable architecture seem to aim towards being less bad, while the holistic approach of passive house and the conservation first premise brings almost any project within the realm of net zero using only on-site renewables. In the same home, triple glazed windows mean year-round comfort, even with spacious views and a great connection to the terrace and surrounding landscape. This home uses structural insulated rammed earth to wrap the north facade for privacy, durability, and energy performance, while opening the south to spectacular views. 3 panes of insulated glass mean you can comfortably sit right next to these views in winter. A project in a more forgiving climate achieves an energy use intensity of just 13.4, even without any renewable energy offsets. In 2019, each one of the projects in our portfolio exceeded the 70% predicted energy use intensity reduction target for an average reduction of 81% across our entire portfolio. To keep pace with the steadily increasing demands of the challenge, we are continuing to pursue innovative design research in all aspects of our architecture. We work to design more environmentally responsible architecture without compromising beauty, comfort, or joy. We start with art and bring the science to it. Thank you.
Well, anything that starts with a quote from Louis Kahn has my attention as one of my idols when I was a young architect in school. But I think that really captures really the essence of what the struggle is in general, going from the immeasurable through the measurable, and then ending up back at the immeasurable, the intangible, this essence that gives us pride. At the end of the day, we want to be able to walk away from a project, look at it, walk through it, touch it, experience it, and feel this pride of what we were able to contribute to and accomplish. And you can see from the work that they've done that they can do that, that we could all do that. I love the focus on the financial approach, which means that not always easy for all of us, financial literacy and looking at cost amortization. Asking a client what their payback threshold is doesn't always get us the best answer. A client, if they even have an answer for that, doesn't reflect reality. So they can answer that question, but then we've all experienced a client sees a shiny object or falls in love with a particular strategy or design element. And then all of a sudden that cost is no longer the barrier that they thought it would be before they saw the shiny object. So it's not the best question to ask. It's always important to ask yourself, what's the best question I can ask here? So looking at cost amortization and looking at value, what can we provide and what are the trade-offs is a really important conversation to have. And focusing on value rather than first cost is really important because, especially in the residential sector, these are not flip developers. These are people's homes and their lives, and they're very connected to it. Another important and critical point is you don't want to invest your sweat and effort through the design and then have things fall apart in construction, which we've all experienced too. So part of that is identifying the best partners. And part of that is communication, having people really understand what the intent is, the design intent, what you're trying to achieve. Because inevitably you run into issues on the job site or things that you didn't anticipate, and you want to ensure that whoever is trying to troubleshoot or solve a problem understands what they're trying to achieve when they solve that problem. And if you're not around, or you just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So that's really critical. In terms of finding the best partners, they mentioned Passive House certified builders. Fantastic if you have that in your part of the country. If not, then you might need to do some homework and you might need to start doing it outside the context of a particular project. So think about that with any of your consultants, your trade partners, your builders, because that's an incredibly important, you're not doing it by yourself. And the trades are critical. The trade partner they were talking about that got the air changes down from 1.2 to 0.3 in a day or less than a day, that is immeasurably valuable. And then being able to compare that across the country to other projects is not just great for your own learning and understanding, but it's also a great story to be able to tell in your marketing. Looking across the country, here we are in the top percentile of being able to achieve this performance for you, which translates back into dollars in your pocket, comfort, beauty, of course, and just value overall. I love that she mentioned less bad, because frankly, that's where we've been for decades, doing less bad, maybe. And less bad, frankly, we don't have time for that anymore. And honestly, doing less bad is way more expensive and has no value. it's time for a paradigm shift. We don't have time for that garbage anymore. And frankly, it's gutless. It's fear. And if you're afraid for the paradigm shift, if you're afraid of really taking on that leap to zero, we've got your back. AIA has education, has resources, nonprofits like mine, communities out there, all kinds of folks. You have resources, you have support, and you can get it. Don't be afraid to make the paradigm shift, because it ends up being better for you, better for your clients, and better value. There is no need for compromise. And really, the compromise is going the less bad route. That's the compromise, because you compromise financially, you compromise in terms of performance, and arguably aesthetics. But really, we can do this. We have done this. It has been done. You can see many, many examples. And if it has been done and is being done, there really isn't an excuse. It's just about getting the support you need, the resources you need, and starting on the path. Architecture, it's all about this union of art and science. It always has been. And we can go from the immeasurable through the measurable, woofy, passive house, you name it, and then achieve these beautiful projects that you've been seeing, and go back to the immeasurable, to the essence and the beauty of what we want to achieve, but without the unintended consequences of negative impacts on public and environmental health. So good luck to you, and AIA and other organizations and other communities are there to support you. So lean on us.